innovation with an example of a company that was at some point an absolute leader on its business. And out of the sudden, they were disrupted and they no longer exist. Is anyone, with a show of hands, is anyone familiar with Tower Records? Do you know what Tower Records is? Interestingly, well, not many people. So for all of these millennials in the audience, Tower Records was a chain of stores, not only in the United States, but globally, that they were a leader selling records, selling music to people. And they were extremely profitable for many years. And suddenly, in around 2016, they went out of business. And so the question is, what disrupted them? What took them out of business after being an absolute leader in what they did? And what disrupted them was precisely a series of advancements in technological innovation, right? They used to sell long plays, discs, and then they were replaced by other technologies, by tape, and then by CD, and then by micro CD. And then there were other options, technologies that enable things like the Napster that you may remember, where people would download those MP3 files. And then that turned out to be illegal. So there was a new platform, which is iTunes from Apple, right? And the iPad, and and the iPod to listen to the music. And then new models enabled through innovation, like Pandora and Spotify, that many people, you guys familiar with Spotify today, correct? Right, so many of us use it. And so there is a completely different way for all of us around the world to consume music. So we no longer care about the long play because we can consume the experience in a much more simplified and convenient way. So these guys went out of business. And that's what led to this billboard on their flagship store here in Los Angeles in Sunset Boulevard, right? This is the end of the world as we know it. Thank you for your loyalty. And they disappeared. So the question is for you guys to think, could this very successful company done something differently so that they could exist today, right? They could. For starters, I think they could have started creating their own platform, the equivalent of the Spotifys of today, right? They could have done many things, but they failed. And again, this is just an example that applies to everything else. They failed because they were so focused on their own process, whatever had worked, right? So when people are starting using other things, what did they do? They tried to improve efficiencies on their own same process, linear thinking, right? Let's reduce costs, let's improve efficiencies, let's cut overhead, and so on. But at some point, whatever they sold was irrelevant. It doesn't matter if someone gives you today a long play for free or a CD. You don't even know where to play it. So they were rendered useless. That's disruptive innovation, right? And the question is, were they the only ones? Of course not. This has happened across all industries. And I want you to look at this sentence here, right? Since the year 2000, over 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have gone out of business, have been acquired, or have filed for bankruptcy. These are the 500 largest companies in the world. And in a matter of a few years, more than half of them have gone out of business. And that is precisely to many of these little logos that most of you may recognize. What we have come to know today as the Uber effect, where the largest transportation company in the world doesn't own a single car. Or the Airbnb effect, where one of the 3 largest accommodation companies in the world doesn't own a single piece of real estate. And they are as valuable as Marriott hotels and Hilton hotels, which own thousands of real estate properties around the world, and need to manage the operation and the depreciation and all the series of things that come with owning assets. These guys don't own the assets. And that's what has happened. And then the largest retailer in the world doesn't own any inventory, and so on. So this is, you may say, so what? Well, that this is happening across all industries, and it may be happening to your industry today, to your company, and I will go even further, to your own job. So this is an invitation to think, okay, how is my job going to evolve and be disrupted through technology, right? So some of the questions that, for us to consider, which industry is next, right? Is anyone safe? And more importantly, at the personal level, are you safe from disruption? And when I say you, is your industry, your business, and more specifically, your job. And what about, I'm just, again, for choosing an example, there are more than 40 different specialized industries. Just to pick one, energy and utilities historically has been an industry that has been very protected from competition. They actually get a monopoly agreed with the government. If you guys are not familiar with it, they get a territory, and there is no other utility that can provide the same service in the same place. They also get something called the rate case, which in very simple terms is a calculation of the return on their assets, and they get a guaranteed return, right? A guaranteed profitability. So when you see this in paper, it looks like a fantastic business. And when you look at all the utilities, for example, here in the United States, Southern California Edison here is more than 100 years old, PG&E more than 100 years old, and so on, Avista and so on. So is this industry safe? Well, many of you may know this guy, Elon Musk, and his company, Solar City, part of Tesla. They have come to disrupt this industry, and there are many other companies coming in. There are trends that, thanks to technology, right, there are smart appliances that reduce consumption. There are users, precisely thanks to Solar City and others, people can create and sell the surplus of their energy. There are, electric vehicles that are now disrupting the patterns of consumption of electricity, and so on. There is regulatory change that is allowing for new business models to come into the industry. So to keep going relatively fast, just continuing on the example, at some point in Australia last year, there was a heat crisis declared by the Prime Minister because of the high temperatures in the summer. And in a back and forth on email, this guy, Elon Musk again, said, I can solve the problem in 100 days, and if I don't, it's going to be for free. So that led to them eventually, months later, creating the largest farm of storage, lithium-ion battery in southern Australia to help with the crisis. And out of the sudden, this company from the outside comes and disrupts a business for that utility. And it's happening here, and it's happening everywhere. And so the point that I'm making here is utility is one of those industries that are so relatively safe. And if they are being disrupted, and if government agencies are being disrupted, everybody else is. Following on, right, there was this fund created by Bill Gates and the owner of Alibaba and the owner of Facebook and a series of other high-profile, high-tech investors, investing now in energy storage to convert solar energy into liquid energy. And they started with $1 billion, and that keeps growing. So they're not doing this for the love of science. They are doing it because that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they are coming to take a piece of it. And the point that I'm making here, as you see, is not another utility coming and disrupting the one next door. It's someone else from the outside. That's disruption. Right? Hopefully, this makes the point. So with that, I want to share with you what are some of the characteristics that I consider to be most relevant for disruptive innovation. And one of them is it creates an entirely new paradigm of how things are done. An example of that is this company, Salesforce, and there are many others. It's not just Salesforce that started it, but this they take most of the credit, right? For the software as a service, they have this logo, no software. So they came and they disrupted, right? It led to the cloud computing model, which is a completely different way of doing IT, right? That was unimaginable 20 years ago, and today is a standard. So created a new paradigm on how to do things. Another characteristic of disruptive innovation is that it benefits by a revolution, not an evolution. The evolution is linear, right? If you have your phone here, you have the version 1, then you come up with the version 2, which is a little better than this one, and then the version 3, and now we're on the iPhone XS, which is a better version of the same thing. That's linear. It's great. It's innovative. It's good. But disruptive is different. It comes from a completely different way. You don't see it coming, right? So in manufacturing, for example, since the time of Henry Ford coming up with the assembly line, there have been many innovations in the area of manufacturing, like Six Sigma and Kaizen and total quality management and other improvements that what they do is improving the same process, making it a little better, a little faster, right? That is linear innovation. Disruptive innovation happened with 3D printing, right? So 3D printing is not making a little better the same thing. It says, let's get all together, get rid of the whole assembly line. You don't need the machine that creates the part, right? So this is a completely different way of doing things. Again, revolution, not evolution. Another important characteristic is that it redefines, disruptive innovation redefines an entire industry model. And the old paradigm becomes useless. An example for this can be Netflix and the subscription model. And again, we think on companies that were very successful before, like Blockbuster, and they are out of business. So they have been disrupted. Another characteristic is that the strength on the old paradigm becomes now a weakness. And this brings us back to the sharing economy, the Ubers and so on. Think for a moment, the company that owned perhaps 100 or 200 or 500 trucks, they were much more competitive than the guy who had 2 or 3 trucks, because they could be all over the country. But suddenly, there is someone that comes and has no trucks, creates an app, and whatever they own, precisely because they own the 500 trucks, they need to deal with all of the inefficiencies, with all of the operational costs and so on, that the other guy doesn't have to deal with. So that becomes their strength in the past paradigm, becomes their weakness. That is the danger with disruptive innovation. If you are on the wrong side of it, that's why you want to be on the right side of it. You want to be the disruptor. The 5 point is that it is outcome-oriented versus process-oriented, as I expressed, right? Back to our example, our friends from Tower Records, right? They focused on improving their process instead of improving the ultimate user experience. And so this is a key. And by the way, this is by no means the extensive, comprehensive list. There may be other characteristics that you guys here in the audience can add to this. But these are some of what I consider the important characteristics that disruptive innovation brings. So with this in mind, let's look at some of these technologies, right? So what are disruptive technologies? There are many of them. And let's start with cloud computing, which is no new news for anyone, right? It's been here for many years. It has become the new standard for business in many ways. It has evolved from originally being a way to reduce costs in infrastructure to then gain efficiency and then gain scale. Today, cloud computing is not the destination for any company. It is an enabler to leverage other technologies and be able to innovate. That is what cloud computing provides. And leveraging a new architecture for developing software in the cloud, as opposed to the on-premise way of developing software with large, heavy, monolithic applications. Now you can leverage containers and Kubernetes technologies and microservices and new methodologies like Agile and DevOps and design thinking and so on. So through the cloud, companies can deliver innovation to the business and to their users literally multiple times a day, as opposed to the old-fashioned, every few months. So this has accelerated innovation. Another very disruptive technology is artificial intelligence, which many people, hear about it today. The big point with artificial intelligence is that now the systems have the ability to learn and understand over time based on the data that they are fed with. And this is a completely new paradigm. It enables new business models, and it is impacting today all different industries, and it is expected that within the following few years, almost every single job and profession will be impacted and will interact with some sort of artificial intelligence. Some of them will be replaced, but some others will be created, jobs that we don't know today. And again, I would love to spend a whole half an hour talking about each of this, but we just have 30 minutes total, so I apologize for kind of running through them and not giving a more detailed level of explanation. Quantum computing, anyone familiar with quantum computing? With a show of hands here? Okay, so just a few people have heard about it, super briefly, right? So quantum computing doesn't have the buzz of AI or blockchain, but it is an extremely disruptive technology. It is leveraging the principles of quantum physics, which in very simple terms is at the subatomic level, matter behaves differently than it does at the plus atomic level. So the little pieces of matter inside of all of us and everything we see, right? A quark inside an atom can be something in somewhere or can be somewhere else or can be in both places at the same time. That sounds weird, but that's quantum physics, and it's true. So using that same principle, quantum computing now, instead of bits, so we went from analog to digital on computing, and then we go from digital to quantum. And so a qubit, which is the equivalent of a bit, can be a 0 or a 1 or both at the same time. And that gives an incredible exponential capacity of computing that can have implications across multiple areas. It can have implications for chemicals and materials to identify new drugs, for imagine for financial services, to run models, for making better investments, for ultra-efficient logistics, for busy airports and logistics companies and so on. The possibilities are incredible. Actually, to enhance artificial intelligence and allow for the better understanding of the universe and the stars and the galaxies beyond us, right? So quantum computing is an extremely revolutionary, disruptive technology. And many companies are working on it. Today, there is one commercial offering of quantum computing, which happens to be by IBM, my employer. So you can find it on the IBM cloud. It's available. And again, has very specialized uses for chemicals and certain industries. And again, as I said, I don't want to kind of be selling IBM, but of course many people know, the brand Watson in artificial intelligence that has been doing a lot of things. There are other companies, Microsoft, Amazon also are doing some, Google are doing some work there, and then there are many other smaller companies. But anyway, so these are three, very disruptive technologies. Then again, we don't have the time here to cover all of these, but just kind of to give you kind of like a big picture of all the things that are out there. There are electric and self-driving vehicles, the 3D printing, the Internet of Things, virtual and augmented reality, right? Robotics, nanotechnology, containers, microservices. There are so many things out there. And all of these technologies connect with each other and enable companies to disrupt fast. Another one that, which is kind of the main subject of this track here, right? Blockchain. Just kind of with a show of hands. I mean, like, does anyone kind of at the high understand what blockchain is? So do we understand what blockchain is? So not everybody, good. So I'll keep it super simple and short. Super simple and short, we're running out of time. This is the fastest explanation. Blockchain is a ledger where people record things. That's the way transactions have been done. I apologize for the one who knows this, right? Briefly, this is a super oversimplified kind of version of what blockchain does. It is a ledger. Eventually, we evolved into some kind of software database where we tracked those transactions. And now blockchain, it is a distributed ledger where we can track those transactions in a collaborative way, and it has multiple advantages, right? This is the way business has been conducted forever before blockchain. You're company A, and then you're selling to company B, and then you have multiple business partners and vendors, and you need to deal with the government and with your banks and so on. And there are many of these, right? So it becomes a mess, and everyone tracks their own version of the transactions. And either by accident or intentionally, someone can tamper with that information, and then who's right? Are you right or am I right? And so it's inefficient, it's expensive. The way with blockchain is you create a shared ledger that through consensus, which is at least 51% of the participants in that network need to consent that the transaction is official, right? And through provenance, which is knowing the history of the asset from the beginning to the end, and through immutability. Immutability doesn't mean that it cannot be changed, the blockchain. It just means that it cannot be tampered with. You can create a new block that will register the previous block, but the transaction will be created. You cannot erase what happened. And this is important for trust. Finality, right? You have one single place. And again, I'm kind of running through these, but very, very briefly. Some of the benefits of this, of course, when you have that new model of conducting business, you will have time savings because it's much more efficient. You will, reduce the cost of duplication. You will reduce risk because there is much more transparency there. And with all of this, you will increase trust. So I want to share with you some briefly some use cases of blockchain. And again, me working for IBM, IBM happens to also be the company with most blockchain implementations. We have today over 400 blockchain implementations. So I'm going to share some of them. And there are many different blockchain platforms, right? We're on the Hyperledger Fabric. There is, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they have differences, right? Ethereum, for example, is anonymous. In Hyperledger, you are not anonymous. And for business, so both of them, I'm not going to say which one is better or worse, but for business, in the business world, we don't conduct business in an anonymous way. You want to know who's who. So in the Hyperledger Fabric, you have that ability with all the benefits of blockchain. So one use case, there is a food safety network that started with Walmart and IBM in a partnership, and actually with a project in China to trace back pork meat, right, for food recalls. But now Walmart and IBM have been working together. Now the consortium has gone big, and Unilever and Nestle and all of their not all of them, but many of their distributors are coming, and they're creating this consortium. So this is for traceability of food. Eventually, all of us will be able to put our phone on the market and say, is my food really organic? Where did it come from? At which temperature was it kept throughout kind of the life cycle of this piece of meat that I have in front of me? So traceability, which ultimately leads to transparency for the user. Again, think on the food. Wouldn't you like to know really where your food came from and in which condition it has been? So that's an example of a real live implementation, right? So many people talk about blockchain everywhere. Not many people have actually implemented blockchain, right? So it's in the world of blockchain, some people call it blockchain tourism, right? There's a lot of tourists, but many people are many companies are exploring it. I know companies that have already titles with the blockchain, like blockchain this and blockchain that, but they don't have a blockchain. They're not using it. So there are some companies that are, right? So another example, global trade, a distribution consortium with Maersk. Maersk is the largest company for these, containers. You've seen these large containers. They represent 90% of the global trade. They go through these little containers. And about over 50% of the price of transporting, say, flowers from Mexico to, London is administrative cost of paper trails. So with this consortium, Maersk and IBM are reducing those costs. With the blockchain, are completely increasing the efficiencies, are transforming the model, and are reducing the costs. So this is a very interesting use case. Again, different industries, right? Global Diamonds with Everledger is the name of the company. So they created a thumbprint of all the diamonds, and now they can trace them. It's kind of a very modern equivalent to these certification agencies that AIG, I think was the name, and there is another one to certify the diamonds. Well, now you can have a blockchain stamped diamond where you know exactly where it comes from. You have the provenance characteristic that is in there. These are just some examples. If you wanted to, and then just think beyond that, right? From diamonds, think on all kinds of luxury goods, for wines, for art, for collectible goods. You can now blockchain them. In many countries, people don't have access to a title of their property. So with blockchain, without the need of a centralized agency, you can provide, again, families to have a record of ownership of their real estate, and so more. So if you want to kind of look at more cases, you can just go to ibm.com/blockchain, and you will see many, again, real life implementations of blockchain, not just kind of conceptual ideas, but real implementations. So what else? So takeaways briefly here, and we're kind of almost on time, right? Number one, embrace digital transformation, right? Don't wait until you need it. You need it. You need it already. You need to transform. You need to embrace digital transformation. Number two, innovate to replace your own business. This is the risk, that is the problem that happened to Tower Records, right? Disrupt your own business before someone else from the outside comes and does it for you. And adding a little bit of poetry here, that's a question: to disrupt or to be disrupted? As our friend William Shakespeare would have said. To disrupt or to be disrupted is the question, so it is definitely better to be the disruptor. I wanted to share some books, related to, technology in general. Vaporized by Robert Thursick is a very good book. Human Plus Machine by Paul Doherty, who's the Chief Innovation Officer from Accenture. And well, the books are there. I actually have posted my own list of my favorite 100 books that I've read on my LinkedIn. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can find the list there in a little article. And that's all I got. If you want to connect with me on social media. And thank you for your time, guys.